What up? Grab my mic. Get out of studio mode. But how's everybody today? We gonna get this right. So much light. How's everybody? Let's tap in. Get this beat going. While I'm tagging the world up. Tagging. Good morning, everybody. What up? I always want to be the first person in the feed. For everybody to be tapping into the convos, the music that I be playing in the morning time be like music that in-house produced by me or a few of my friends, and the music by the team, which the label is Black House, BH the label. This beat was made by me. So for people that be tapping in and watching on multiple levels, inbox me. Or if y'all want to email me, you can hit me at Willie Walker BH at 1551. Right? And that's Twitter. Or if you want to email me, I'm sorry. If you want to email me, it's williewalkerbh@gmail.com, y'all. You know what I'm saying? All right, we're going to get to it. Fire, so we in and we out of there. But yeah, good morning, everybody. Good morning. Try to give people a chance to get in the building, see what's up. We'll drop it in a couple of groups. Y'all know the era we live in, you got to put it in the groups. You got to put them headings, how they ate us as slaves. This conversation deep. It's a deep conversation. You got to forgive me because right now I'm dropping this live in the different groups before we get started, because once we take off, I ain't looking back. See what other spots in here. But yeah, so gotta shout out my homeboy Rick Mills. Rick came to me and was like, he hit me yesterday, but I was like, I be doing so much sometimes. So my boy Rick was like, yo, he sent me a link to this joint called the Delectable Negro. Which when I'm thinking about it, when he sent it to me, I'm thinking to myself, like he's sending me something. He know I be on knowledge. So a lot of times people send me shit, sometimes I'm quick to be like, I'm pretty sure there's some knowledge shit. So I kind of push it to the side for the moment, whether if I'm in the studio or if I'm working, and then I'll come back to it or when something catch my attention. But I did notice that it was a very unique looking cover. Y'all see it? And I told him I'm gonna check it, right? The Delectable Negro, right? So me thinking nothing of it, you know what I'm saying? I get up this morning and my man Rick, he like, I could tell something was on the spirit because my boy, he hit me like talking about this shit, but I didn't even understand the depths of what this book was going about. But I definitely realized quickly, you know what I'm saying? His first messages to me was just like, his first message kind of got my attention. And I was like, damn, like, word. So something said, I'm gonna go look. And I'm gonna go look it up and I'm gonna figure out what this book is about. But little did I know that this book and the things was talking about how things they did to us, not just like lynching and hanging us, but how they butchered us and cooked us and chopped us up in pieces and ate us as rituals and shit like that. The slave owners. And, you know what I'm saying, on a deeper level. So I was trying to find audio books because I be telling everybody like the new game, I'm gonna keep it funky with y'all. I read books, but I know from all of the old niggas and all the wise men, all of them niggas blind. They can't see because books make your eyes bad, squinting at them little words. So audio book has an advantage to it. So I was able to find digging this morning that talking to Rick. I found a lady who read part of chapter 2, right? And let's get to it. I'm gonna take y'all. This is where we're gonna start the conversation. The name of the book is The Delectable Negro. And we're gonna build off this. Anything y'all want to talk about in the comment, I will be back through the comments to go through as we build. All right.
I'm going to read from the book The Delectable Negro, Human Consumption and Homoeroticism Within U.S. Slave Culture by Vincent Woodard. Chapter 2, page 59. Sex, honor, and human consumption.
Sex, honor, and human consumption.
Lewis, a Kentucky slave owner, owned a considerable number of slaves whom he drove constantly, fed sparingly, and lashed severely. According to the abolitionist Lydia Maria Child, Lewis was a typical plantation owner whom most in the local community probably respected and looked to as a model wealthy citizen in terms of his treatment of his slaves. In 1826, he would commit crimes against his slaves that would cause his community to ostracize him and pursue legal restraint. He committed suicide while awaiting criminal trial. It is hard to say from the evidence if George, a young, recalcitrant slave on Lewis's plantation, was a favorite, or if Lewis consciously chose him, as many masters did, as the object of ritualized violence and as an emblem of his manhood and noble social stature. All we know for sure is that George, like many on the plantation, often went hungry, suffered the lash too often, and grew to despise and resist his condition of bondage. George provoked his master's punishment by frequently running away, in addition to disobeying. Sent to the spring one day to collect water into an elegant pitcher, George made the horrid mistake of letting the pitcher fall and standing by and watching as it dashed to shivers on the rocks. As punishment for George's transgression, his master bound him to a wooden plank and in the manner of a butcher quartered him with an axe and cooked his severed body parts and pieces of flesh over a billowing fire.
So a slave master, I don't remember his name, but he sent one of his slaves to go get some water, and the slave basically went down and took this water to the well. And he made the mistake of dropping this. I guess it was something made out of something nice, maybe glass or something crystal. And he dropped it down, and it broke in pieces, whether it was down the well on the side. And as he put him on a wooden board, butchered him, and then cooked his body. Go back a little bit.
Him with an axe and cooked his severed body parts and pieces of flesh over a billowing fire. In preparation for this ritualized punishment, Lewis gathered all of the slaves on the plantation into the most roomy Negro house, bolted the door, and told those assembled that the design of this meeting was to teach them to remain at home and obey his orders. The ritual begins with George's younger brother helping the master bind the slave to a wooden bench.
He said the point of doing all of this was to teach them to be obedient and to listen and basically never to run. This is more like, this is a different form of like what we would call Willie Lynch. See, we learn like lately, I don't know why, I ain't even been looking, but lately I've been stumbling across information, not even looking. Like, do you know that anywhere you go in America, almost any state, if you go to like a community that's wealthy and that they live by a lake, the lake, if you do the history on most of these lakes, they were wealthy black cities that after they like went through the city one night and killed everybody or ran everybody out, the rest that they didn't kill, they flooded the area with water. And this is all over the country. If you think I'm lying, I'll do a convo about it tomorrow. It's so many cases that they don't talk about, right? But it's still the same form of like Willie Lynch in the aspect of he was just the one type, but it was like I was telling y'all that day, it was letters, there was multiples. But in this case, this guy was he was brutal. He did it himself, and he said that the ritual started with just his brother.
George was called up, and by the assistance of his younger brother, laid on a broad bench or block. The master then cut off his ankles with a broad axe. In vain, the unhappy victim screamed. Not a hand among so many dared to interfere. Having cast the feet into the fire, he, the master, lectured the Negroes at some length. He then proceeded to cut off his limbs below the knees. The sufferer besought him to begin with his.
Wow. So as so now they're explaining to you how they went about it. So they have he had all his slaves around, or even people in the town probably can see this shit, but all the slaves around. And so he had them tied up to a wooden board. So he cut both his feet off by their ankles with an axe. And then they drop in the fire, and he turned around and he started to lecture the slaves to let them know, like, see, you understand that this, if any of you motherfuckers do this shit right here, any of you niggas got the heart to run. So that's what they mean. And then as he went on, next he cut them off. He cut off both legs by the knees. Right? I'm gonna go back a little bit. Not much.
Lectured the Negroes at some length. He then proceeded to cast the feet into the fire. He, the master, lectured the Negroes at some length. He then proceeded to cut off his limbs below the knees. The sufferer besought him to begin with his head. It was in vain. The master went on thus until trunk, arms, and head were all in the fire. Still protracting the intervals with lectures and threatenings of like punishment in case any of them were disobedient or ran away or disclosed the tragedy they were compelled to witness in order to consume the bones. The fire was briskly stirred until midnight. Sometime in the early morning, an earthquake materialized and shook the slave shack, crumbling the walls and extinguishing the fire. This act brought an abrupt halt to the master's activities, and the Negroes were allowed to disperse with charges to keep the secret under the penalty of like punishment. Later that evening, Lewis's wife inquires into her husband's activities. When his wife asked the cause of the dreadful screams she had heard, he said that he had never enjoyed himself so well at a ball as he enjoyed himself that evening. Lewis's response to his wife, as disturbing and incongruous as it is, puts this entire scenario into context. Contrasted against the plantation mistress and the domestic spirit, we see more clearly George's erotic significance to his master and the clandestine pleasure taking that the white man associates with his slave. The metaphor of the ball is significant insofar as one goes to a ball with someone. Lewis would, under normal circumstances, attend a ball with his wife, dancing with her, holding her close, smelling and touching her body. Instead, we have George as the unwilling feminized partner and conjugal mate. It is George whom the master touches, smells, violently lavishes with attention and care, and ingests with the same relish that he would hors d'oeuvres, fine music, or cocktails served at an open bar at a ball. George and his ritualized punishment reify and ennoble Lewis's white male identity. Powerful feelings of satiation, leisurely comfort, and pleasure accompany Lewis's cannibalization of George. As parasite and consumer, the master takes in, imbibes George's essence. George's terror and the terror of all the slaves feed the master's authority and power. And we have to consider that in addition to emotional and spiritual consumption, the master might have literally ingested pieces of George's flesh. Literal consumption was such a taboo topic during the time period that even radical abolitionists such as Child evaded direct discussion of this topic. When Child presented the facts of Lewis's case in an appeal in favor of the class of Americans called Africans, she made no comment about the literal implications of Lewis's flesh, quartering and cooking ritual, or about the significance of the secrecy.
The topic this morning is a book called The Delectable Negro, and it's about how they used to, how they ate us, how symbolically and physically how they ate us, and like things they did to us. So when we were reading, for people that just tapping in, is about how a slave got tortured for breaking a water pitcher, right? And they put him on a wooden bug, started cut off both his feet by his ankles, and then he lectured the plantation, and then he cut them off by the knees, and then he's just telling you how they ate us during times and how it made them feel bigger and better. And like one of the last parts, it was hitting me different. That's why y'all see my face. It was hitting me different because I'm thinking that she's describing this like how they would have a function of like elegance, how they would have like liquor over here, hors d'oeuvres over here. Like this is how they were functioning. I remember I was talking to Rick this morning. I remember that I think it was in Frederick Douglass' book that he was talking about how he went to some city, like they loved him, like a white town, and they loved him when he spoke. But we got there and they had like some famous like abolitionist, like black abolitionist knuckles like on a plate. In another place, there was a place where they had like another dude like testicles, like you know how like you be in the window and they be mannequins, but it was like the mannequins was holding the testicles of like black people, and people used to like come to this store for these reasons. So this book, that's not in the book, but I'm just showing you how all of this connects. And this book is about how they ate us, and symbolically, because they, you know, just like I guess I was saying voodoo, how they would say how some people in voodoo will eat their enemies and it gave them powers in some sense. It's kind of in that type of state. So that's what we're talking about this morning. And I want to go back a couple minutes because some of this kind of was just like, let's go back.
Scenario into context. Contrasted against the plantation mistress and the domestic spear, we see more clearly George's erotic significance to his master and the clandestine pleasure taking that the white man associates with his slave. The metaphor of the ball is significant insofar as one goes to a ball with someone. Lewis would, under normal circumstances, attend a ball with his wife, dancing with her, holding her close, smelling and touching her body. Instead, we have George as the unwilling feminized partner and conjugal mate. It is George whom the master touches, smells, violently lavishes with attention and care, and ingests with the same relish that he would hors d'oeuvres, fine music, or cocktails served at an open bar at a ball. George and his ritualized punishment reify and ennoble Lewis's white male identity. Powerful feelings of satiation, leisurely comfort, and pleasure accompany Lewis's cannibalization of George. As parasite and consumer, the master imbibes George's essence. George's terror and the terror of all the slaves feed the master's authority and power. And we have to consider that in addition to emotional and spiritual consumption, the master might have literally ingested pieces of George's flesh. Literal consumption was such a taboo topic during the time period that even radical abolitionists such as Child evaded direct discussion of this topic. When Child presented the facts of Lewis's case in an appeal in favor of the class of Americans called Africans, she made no comment about the literal implications of Lewis's flesh, quartering and cooking ritual, or about the significance of the secrecy that he continually reinforces through speech and act. This lack of comment from a woman who frequently noted the most extreme and disturbing implications of the slave master's cruelties indicates how taboo was the subject of human consumption. Understanding Child's tentativeness concerning the topic of human consumption gives us all the more reason to wonder about the literal implications of Lewis's cannibalistic ritual and the truth of what he really sought to hide through his constant reinforcing of silence and secrecy. I begin the chapter with this graphic example of symbolic, if not literal, human consumption because it illustrates how there existed during slavery unspoken codes of white male honor and respectability connected to the consumption of the slave. Master Lewis reinforces the secrecy and clandestine nature of his actions by bolting the door of the slave cabin, threatening like punishments to those who disclosed the tragedy they were compelled to witness, and excavating and secretly reburying George's bones after the earthquake.
So I remember they were saying that it was an earthquake after all of this shit happened. But they were saying like he bound the doors and he threatened all the other slaves. He would threaten the other slaves and probably other people. Like if y'all say anything, this could happen to y'all too. So it was another form of how to control, how to rule by fear and through the mind.
Earthquake has leveled the building. Furthermore, his invocation of ball culture and his report to his wife clues us in to how he associated social esteem and finery with the cannibalization of George. A heinous and unspeakable bond of clandestine honor and pleasure taking binds Lewis to his slaves. As we see through the events on the Lewis plantation, the most intimate sharers of the unknown secret were, in most cases, the slaves and the slave master. And the most reliable and enlightened witnesses were the slaves themselves. In slave narratives and ex-slave interviews, Black persons correlated white consumptive appetites with Southern codes of honor and nobility. Whites rarely acknowledged the comments made by Blacks. All the same, these repressed Black voices provide invaluable insights into debates about cannibalism in the 19th century United States, the erotic and homoerotic implications of the consumption of the slaves, and the unspoken codes of sex and honor that inform Black male consumption. Orlando Patterson writes that the master's sense of honor was derived directly from the degradation of a slave, beginning in childhood and continuing through life in his despotic exercise of power. Elsewhere, Patterson emphasizes that the master generally camouflaged this association of honor with master's relationship to the slave so as not to reveal his dependence, his parasitism of the slave. John Hope Franklin posits honor as the most central defining characteristic of 19th century Southern culture, the honor of the Southerner. Franklin proclaims, caused him to defend with his life the slightest suggestion of irregularity in his honesty or integrity, and he was fiercely sensitive to any imputation that might cast a shadow on the character of the women of his family. To him, nothing was more important than honor. Indeed, he placed it above wealth, art, learning, and the other delicacies of urban civilization, and regarded its protection as a continuing preoccupation. frankly describes a public culture of honor wherein chivalry, how one was regarded in society, upper class status, courtship practices, and rituals of social etiquette all played a role in the performance and the display of male honor. However, when it came to the topic of consumption under slavery, these public rules and displays of honor took on clandestine, unspoken casts. Proponents of Southern slave culture did their best to repress evidence of the slave master, who would rather whip a Negro than sit down to the best dinner. Such persons reveal the existence of an acquired taste for and a premium placed on Negro flesh that went against myths that blacks were tainted, disgusting, and untouchable. They
So it's crazy when you really think about this, right? It's so you think about it, and it says, when she made the point just now that it goes against the point that it goes against all points. So when somebody would say, we would consider like nasty, dirty, not clean. So that if that's the case, and then you got to think like being kept in conditions where we can't even really be in control of our bathing, because when they came and got us, we weren't dirty people. So the bathtubs and deodorants and soaps, we invented it. So to be put in them conditions and then to be say that we're dirty, but then to realize that they did their best to hide this shit as a whole as Southern culture. Right? Like they didn't want people to know that instead of having dinner with his family, he'd rather be outside whipping a Negro and torturing a Negro or eating on him. We got to think about this shit as an experiment. Like a little boy, when he gets something, like he get a certain, you get him a toy or certain things and they play with him and they imagine like this is the type of free range that they had with black people. The truest statement I can tell y'all is that at the end of the day, there's no atrocity that should make you feel surprised. Why? Because Newton's law, anything that can happen will happen. So in a circumstance where, just like Jerry Jones, when he was doing that, blocking them kids, everybody was doing it. It was okay. It was allowed. So when we look at this shit 70 years later, whatever, 50, 60, 70, 80 years later, when we look at this same picture, then we looking at it from the lens of today, but it was okay. So if it's okay and it's normal as far as with like a slave was a slave, he ain't had no rights. So the same way how people butcher dogs, fight dogs, same thing they did to us. Same way how motherfuckers do animal, they like dissect animals, they did it to us. Same way how people like had sex with animals, same thing. It's like that anytime a human can get something at free range when he feel like it's his, it's abused. Very small percentage of mankind, I believe, with power cannot abuse his power. His or her power. And that's fact. Because curiosity and the ability to do things without getting in trouble. So to conceal it, that's why they concealed it. You know what I'm saying? That's why they didn't want it to be known, and like they didn't want the mentality to be out there that way. But it was, when you think about how she's breaking it down, it's crazy. Now, this guy, they eventually took him to court. And before the case could get finished, he blew his brains out.
example of the Kentucky slave owner, Lewis, exemplifies notions of etiquette, good taste, homoeroticism, and gender variance in shaping white masculinity on the plantation. Yet the slave owning community to which Lewis belongs and Lewis himself both conspired to hide and contain through legal reprimand and suicide the reality of the master's feeding upon slave, ennobling self and society in the process. Numerous documented scenarios of this type confirm the plantation masters maintain, in large part, a clandestine culture of honor and sex based in the social consumption of the slave. Still as prevalent as such examples are, the dominant narrative on and off the plantation continues to be that the consumption of slaves brought dishonor to self and community. Going against the common assumption, I strive throughout this chapter to decipher the implicit social codes that, as Patterson observes, translated the slave's degradation into the master's despotic honor, and more specifically, into consumptive appetites that reified and ennobled white masculinity on and off the plantation. Before we can understand and analyze the unspoken culture of honor associated with slave consumption, it helps to first understand how thoroughly or rhetoric of dishonor infused discussions of slave consumption in 19th century America. Following this line of inquiry, I begin the discussion of consumption and dishonor by examining the prevalent 19th century concern that the United States was becoming a cannibal nation. Clergy, congressmen, popular novelists, and northern abolitionists, among
Wow. Wow. Ain't too many times you're gonna see me come live and be like, wow. Wow. So they were saying at the time, like, you know, America had become a cannibal nation. See, we never asked ourselves when all these kids go missing and human trafficking and all this shit. And like, you got to remember, like, I'm thinking about when I hear this, I'm thinking about those 4 or 5 million kids that's disappearing every year. Black girls disappearing, and they not finding no skeletons and no bones. And in this book, it was talking about how they would roast you, how they'd do you like a pig, and they would roast you and dehydrate you. And then after that, what they'll do is they'll slow cook you, the meat will fall off you, the skin, whatever. And then they also said if they keep turning the bones or something every couple hours, the bones will disappear. It make you think about what the fuck is really going on. Is it possible that we live in a cannibal society right now? And that not only was the so-called black man and black woman the most valuable and economical piece, but I ain't even read the whole book, but I know where it's going sexually. If I watch shows, y'all ever watch the shows about all the white people going around the world eating? Well, when I be watching them, I'm a fat nigga. Excuse my language. I'm a fat person, right? I love food, right? But when I be watching these shows, it always hit me at some point. It'd be like, okay, every place this dude went, he had a scorpion penis, a shark penis, a cow penis, a lamb penis. You know what I'm saying? If it had a penis, he tried it. Everywhere he went, he was like, and guess what I got? Penis, stingray penis. Well, I was like, God damn, it's just like, and in my mind, I'm thinking like, well, what the fuck would make a person want to eat penis? And then you start looking into aphrodisiacs and learning that a lot of cultures, they say the African man and woman has what they call sex magic. Our sexual stamina and drive is a lot different from others. So just like other animals, they believe you eat the penis of the animal is going to enhance you. Now, is it true? It's some truth to a lot of this. So imagine what they was doing with the black man. See, I already understand where this is going sexually. And for the woman, you know, if y'all don't know, they did experiments where they would, you know, put instruments and tools all in. A lot of instruments they use in the hospital today, the old ones that's banned, should I say, all the metal tools that they used to show in movies, that they use in like them evil movies when the girls and be getting tortured in the secret homes like Black Widow. Well, that those type of instruments, that's what they was using. They was experimenting, opening y'all up, looking at what y'all body was at, putting y'all breasts, putting each one of y'all butt cheeks on display. And I know I said it like that, putting y'all bodies on display. And we got proof of that of what they did and how they did that to that lady from Africa. So I just want y'all to really think about it. I'm gonna go back a little bit, not much.
As the unspoken culture of honor associated with slave consumption, it helps to first understand how thoroughly a rhetoric of dishonor infused discussions of slave consumption in 19th century America. Following this line of inquiry, I begin the discussion of consumption and dishonor by examining the prevalent 19th century concern that the United States was becoming a cannibal nation. Clergy, congressmen, popular novelists, and northern abolitionists, among others, passionately debated the topic of the United States becoming a cannibal nation as a result of its condoning and legally sanctioning slavery. Implicitly, those who engaged in this discussion presume that cannibal nationhood was a dishonorable thing, concerned with returning to the nation a sense of honorable and noble purpose. Discussions among white Americans rarely focus on the particular codes of honor within cultures of consumption on the plantation. Neither did such discussion focus on the social consumption of the Negro within the nation at large, a reality that fugitive emancipated Black persons consistently emphasize in their writings and speeches. This national discussion of Black male consumption and honor frames my ensuing discussion of literal instances of human consumption. In the 18th and 19th centuries, a number of different instances of cannibalism at sea, cannibalism that took place following shipwrecks occurred involving Black men. Although cannibalism at sea was common in the.
Let's read some of these chats real quick. Them homoerotic too. It said this is so deep, and they want us to just forget and act like nothing happened. Now, I mean, yeah, that's the biggest point. Because when I was talking to Rick this morning, he was saying how, when we look at everything that's going on, like just look at how they acted about when people have something to say about like the untouchables. We'll say that word, but when they start calling anti-Semitic, and look at how defensive it is, and like they don't want to get over these things, and like nobody's making them get over that, or they're everybody dealing with it sensitively. But when it comes out of slavery and our shit, Rick's point was like they want us to just get over it. Like they're not saying, like they're not telling the untouchables like, yo, this shit happened 80 years ago, 75 years ago, 100 years ago, and y'all still got money. Y'all need to. Ain't nobody saying that to them. But with us, it's kind of like, well, y'all ain't been slaves for this long, and y'all still ain't get it together, and this and that, and this and that, and black on black crime. But in any culture where like you put in any place where the same people live around each other, it's gonna be high spikes of crime. In Germany, they put all the Jews together, and the crime rate spiked. That was part of the propaganda to make it look like that they were criminals. And that's what, what I'm saying? That's what they did in Germany. And this other point was saying how Kanye was telling them to forgive Hitler. And it was like telling us to and he trying to get them to see, like, truthfully, like, how can anybody say that they're people of God when the number one part of the religion of all religions is forgiveness, especially in Christianity or Judaism? And then I seen something yesterday about how there's a whole section of Jews who are now claiming Jesus as their savior. Like it's always kind of been, but Catholic and Christianity is different. So there's a group of Jews in Israel that have adopted Jesus as their forefront, and it's a lot going on. But you see how this conversation sparks so many conversations. And not to get off topic, but the point was that with us, it's like we've been out of slavery. We need to get over it. We need to get it together. They got all of the people that were still living, or the descendants of the people that can prove it, they got reparations for this shit, for the Holocaust. But with us, we done seen, I was live the other day with that dude, that Texas senator, was like, reparations. They just want a handout. You know what I'm saying? You be like, damn. But it's because at the end of the day, listen, I want everybody who watch me to be clear. Keep your money. Give me the 40 acres. You can keep the mule too. Let me tell you why you can keep the mule. The mule cannot reproduce itself. It is not natural. So in order for them to give you a mule, they have to take like a donkey. And what's the other one? It's like, because a mule is a donkey and something else mixed. Can't think of what it is off top. But it's not natural. So it makes a child, but the child cannot reproduce. So you can keep the mule. The aspect of the mule was an animal that can live for, I guess, 10, 12 years, that can help you, because if you growing your food or getting the soil right, you're gonna need something to pull you for them straight lines. That's gonna take most of the energy load off you from pulling it and give him the pulling job. So that the mule was for free labor. But that's why the only time we will ever appreciate family is if we get put in that time where we got to depend on our family members as like workers on our own land. You know what I'm saying? Now, it says, if you don't know the past, you can't know the future. I always was saying that, like, in psychology, they say depending on what you know about your past, depends on how far you can go in your future, right? Because if you only think you were slaves, your past destination becomes your future destination ceiling. A horse and a donkey. Thank you. I don't know why I can't think of that. But just like that, so is the lamb. So when we hear the things like the Lamb of God, the lamb is a llama and a sheep. Who is this behind me? Beset going crazy. Yeah. But now, like, I want y'all to understand. So let me keep reading the comments. It says they want us to care about these other countries and never address them turning us into jerky. That's not funny, bro, but you retarded. It says, let me see what else we got. We got the clam chowder won't doing enough. I can't, bro. Nah, but you know, that's how YouTube and internet gonna be with it anyway. Because I understand you got to make some humor out of it. Because if not, this shit gonna depress you. Not surprising. So I want y'all to remember when y'all get off it, I want y'all to look up all black towns, wealthy black towns that's lakes now. Not just lakes, but the town is still under the fucking water. Y'all want to see? Let me hold on. See if I can find that damn news clip.
For Hype Plus, I'm Terrence Sims. It's almost that time of tricks or treats, tales of horror, and ghastly shrieks. American Horror Stories on Film often capture sadistic tirades of psychopaths or the various huntings.
It's not a real video, so I'm gonna play the audio so y'all can hear this joint. Because on my phone, and this is one black town. Here you go. This is the one I'm looking for.
Was a town called Oscarville, Georgia. Now, Oscarville was a thriving, predominantly Black community with a church, a school, and dozens of homes until the year 1912 when a very bad thing happened. Oh, two very bad things. In 1912, two Black teenagers were accused of rape. They were tried, convicted, and sentenced to death in a single day. And after they were executed, a mob of white men terrorized, drove out, or killed all the Black people in the surrounding area. And they did that until the entire Black community of Oscarville disappeared. The county went from having over 1,000 Black residents in 1912 to 0 in 1920. That story is so sad, it makes this story look like a comedy.
And that story is the same year as the Titanic.
Black community had been run off, the white people of Forsyth County said, you know what we could use? A big old lake. So they made one, right where the town of Oscarville had just been. They flooded the area and literally covered up the entire town with water. This is what it looks like right now.
Hold on. I'm going to show y'all. Let me pause it and pull it up the timestamp. This crazy. Where this journey go with these conversations and this type of podcast and what we doing, I think is the most important piece. And that's why I'm thankful for like sharing information with people and people coming to me. Like I got a good sense of a lot of people inbox me stuff. And even like during morning convo, sometimes I have my own ideas and they would send me stuff that morning and I'd be like, ooh, I like this too. You know what I'm saying? And I would watch it naturally with y'all for the first time so you would get my true reaction. Hold on, real quick.
Currently, literally underwater.
God damn, hold up. That's
Other Black towns have area, and they did that until the entire Black community of Oscar.
Hold on, y'all.
Tonight.
Of course, they're gonna give me the runaround. Hold on.
It's the Earth-shot prize, the most prestigious.
Yeah, how did I get there? It just changed the whole joint.
Currently, literally underwater. It was a town called Oscarville, Georgia. Now, Oscarville was a thriving, predominantly had been run off. The white people of Forsyth County said, you know what we could use? A big old lake. So they made one, right where the town of Oscarville had just been. They flooded the area and literally covered up the entire town with water. This is what it looks like right now. But the town is still under there. The homes and churches and schools, there's...
Hold on. You gotta bear with me.
18th and 19th centuries, reported cases.
Wrong one.
But the town is still under there. The homes and churches and schools, they're still down there. And now people go boating on top of them. Compared to that, this is truly a rom-com. Now, you might be thinking, what a weird, isolated incident. But just like the rat who ate the pizza in the subway, this story is both crazy and common. Ever heard of Collegia, Alabama? It was once a thriving Black community with a Black college, the first Black railroad, and literally hundreds of family homes. Today, it's Lake Martin. At least they had the decency to name it after a Black person. And if you think this kind of thing only happened in the South, let me introduce you to a place called Central Park. It's named after that coffee shop on Friends. Central Park used to have a Black community in it called York Hill. But the city of New York destroyed York Hill so that they could build the Central Park Reservoir. Because if there's one thing New York needs, it's another place for ducks to hang out. But if you come here, don't try and feed those ducks. They are very aggressive. Mess around and lose a finger. Now, when the residents of York Hill were kicked out of their homes, they fled to another Black community nearby called Seneca Village. And then a few years later, New York destroyed Seneca Village too, so that they could build Central Park on top of it. The craziest part of this story is that I work a few blocks away from a place where the...
Okay, Seneca Village is the place that old dirty bastard realized that his grandfather was like the chief of that place. And they also said that there's an obelisk and statue, and not a statue, there's a statue, which is the obelisk, the same one that's actually from Egypt in Central Park right now. It's always been there. And what I'm telling you is that if it came from there, it was brought here a long time ago. They never build in that area, Central Park, and they keep it apart. They got water and all this stuff. You know, they do not mess with it. They keep this area because nobody ever thought that this area was an indigenous area, the people that lived in this place. Right? But just to show y'all,
government disappeared 2 Black communities. And until recently, I didn't know about any of it. You know why? Because it worked. They tried to erase Black communities and they came way too close. But now there are people doing the research. So we are finally learning about places like Henry and McKee Islands, which is now located under Lake Guntersville in Alabama, and Vanport, Oregon, which is now located under Delta Park. And all of these towns, which are currently literally underwater.
Hold on. I'm gonna show you how this list.
Hey, wait, hold on. What was that last one?
Hold on. I'm gonna show you. I just gotta go back. I just want to show y'all the list. Hold on. I'm about to show you. It's gonna pop up on the screen because I want to show you how many it is. Hold on. I'm gonna turn the volume on my phone up real quick.
In Alabama, and Vanport, Oregon, which is now located under Delta Park. And all of these towns, which are currently literally underwater. Hey, wait, hold on. What was that last one? Old Neversink. That's a real place.
See how many names was on that shit? And she ran that shit fast. Let's go back. I'm about to say it to you again.
Guntersville in Alabama, and Vanport, Oregon, which is now located under Delta Park. And all of these towns, which are currently literally underwater.
Henry Island, Alabama, Kent, California, Beard, California, Elmore, California. Now we remember that Queen Khalifa, that all that shit was her territory. So all of these, what I'm telling you is that all of these indigenous ass places, they got under fucking water, just like the Grand Canyon was underwater at one time. So now the question I'm starting to ask myself, when they came here, when they got here, were there dams and stuff already built? And the reason why I ask that is we know that the Africans from the Nile Valley created the systems of dams and holding water back. So we know they've been doing this for 10,000 years. So did they come here and then after colonizing and taking over, flood those areas like New Orleans, for example? New Orleans is already, nobody understands about New Orleans is like way under sea level, meaning that if the levees weren't there, most of New Orleans would be underwater. So they hold water back to have more land. And also, where there's water for a long time, the ground is very fertile, so it helps you grow and it's very nutrient. So they push the land back to create more space. So when the levees broke, that's what it really looked like. That's what it looked like. That's what that place is really supposed to look like. So we know that they did this all over Africa, the Middle East. So did they flood these areas? And why? Not just because first thing that hit my mind is that when you talk about these places, the average person is gonna hear this and be like, yeah, Black Town's another Black Wall Street. Like, yeah, but no. Because when we start talking about Central Park and Seneca Village, these are like indigenous areas. And Central Park still has the obelisk from Egypt in it. Talking about it looked like the Washington Monument. That's why when people see it, they think like, oh, it's the Washington Monument. They have no idea that that's something that's thousands of years older that represents a Sar and a Set in the phallic of the one that she flew over and had the Immaculate Conception, the phallus of a man. You get what I'm saying? So that shit really, that whole stone is really from Egypt. And so that's what made me realize that, hold on, this is a lot deeper, right? So Elmore, California, Morley, California, Cibola, Colorado, Spina, Colorado, Dillon, Colorado, Jerusalem,
Hey, wait.
Hold up. Jerusalem, Connecticut. This need to be investigated. Is it Jerusalem in America? But we know they did change name, and I'm just
under Delta Park. And all of these.
Damn, it's going so, she threw it at us so fast.
Hold on. What was literally currently literally underwater?
Dillon, Colorado, Jerusalem, Connecticut, Old Fair, Indiana, Round Valley, New Jersey, Warren, Maryland, Dana, Massachusetts, Enfield, Massachusetts, Greenwich, Massachusetts, Prentice, Mississippi. Now, the oldest civilization in America, and they don't ever talk about it, and they believe it's one of the oldest on the planet, is Mississippi. The Mississippi, in Nefertiti's tomb, she's pouring a cup of water that flows in a V, but they realize that there's a lake on Earth that flows, and the way she did the V, it has the same crinkles and lines in it. And they realize that she's showing you the Mississippi River. More than likely, she came from royalty, but she probably married into this kingdom of Egypt. There was multiple kingdoms. So she's probably telling us that she comes from Mississippi. So the Mississippi, this is Mississippi, is an ancient town. Look it up. But the Mississippi River is the Nile River of America because it basically, you can get from Canada all the way down by Texas into down in Florida using that river. It's just like the Nile. So it's the Nile of America. And all of the ancient cultures lived around the Mississippi, and the Mississippi River and that whole section. Like, look at it. I want y'all, when y'all get a chance, look at it. Life started by water. The Nile River, all of the oldest cultures started around this river. So anytime they traveled and went anywhere else, they would live by water because they know that wherever there's water, that everything else applies. Food, trees, right?
Hey, wait, hold on. What was that last one? Old Neversink. That's a real place.
Damn.
Well, if we've learned one thing today, it's never assume something is unsinkable. There are over 100 drowned American towns, and many were destroyed in the name of something called development-induced displacement. That's when people have to leave their homes so the government can develop things like dams or parks or lakes. This happens to both white and Black people, but historically, when it happens, Black people and other people of color are undercompensated for their property or not compensated at all. The theory is that
just like in North Carolina. See, I was out there, you know what I'm saying? My wife from Dunn, so I lived out there for like 2-3 years, and I got to really learn about like the country and understanding and gaining respect for it. But then my bro, he lived in Smithfield, and I used to be back and forth. And the first thing I learned about them country boys, especially Johnson County, like they got a certain arrogance to them. Like they really do. And they be like, who the fuck these niggas think they is? But something was just like, yo, dig, bro. So one day I sat back and I dug and I realized that a lot of Johnson County was owned by like Black people. Like after slavery, like we owned it. And then like, I can't think of his name, but he went through Smithfield and a lot of Johnson County, and him and the Klan forcefully made them sign over their land and like lynch their kids or lynch people, shit like that, and took their land. Like, you know what I'm saying? So that's how Johnston County became such a predominantly white racist county. You know what I'm saying?
the short-term bad effects are worth the long-term benefits for the community. But it's not fair if the long-term gain is mostly for white people. Now, look.
My point was that they were somebody. You know what I'm saying? And then when you go to Dunn, the first thing I noticed in Dunn is like they're dark, like a different type of dark. Like a lot of the people, the guys, they're dark, like that shade of black you don't even really see around. You know what I'm saying? I'm telling y'all, like, look, if y'all know anybody from Dunn or ever been to Dunn, y'all know what I'm talking about.
Luckily, there's a solution. It's a very complicated system. It involves a series of, who am I kidding? Cut some dang checks. That's it. If you're going to kick black people out of their homes, make sure they have the money to stay on their feet. Cut a dang check. And yes, you can pay their descendants too, because generational wealth is one of the many things that is destroyed when you put black communities underwater. So cut a dang check. These drowned towns are part of the Black American history they don't want to teach you. It's ugly and it's gross, and we don't even know all of it. And the more we find
out, the worse it gets. See, we knew about we looked at the lynchings, and we learned about the cutting off testicles and ripping us apart with horses, and you know what I'm saying? We heard about that. We heard about all of the tactics that they used, but it's so much more. So this is where the conversation of where Kanye say slavery was a choice. I didn't disagree with him because naturally, not that I'm saying it's right 100%, but naturally when you think I was feeling that Kanye meant that he was thinking like all of these black people on the plantation, why they ain't just like ride or die for it like their ancestors. So they always had a choice to rebel. That's what I felt like he was saying. A lot of people didn't feel like that. But when we start to understand that they were watching their husbands or kids being eaten, and imagine you seen them, they lynched him and he had y'all watching and he lectured y'all and did this in front of y'all, and then they cooked them, and then later on you seen Massa and like all the white people around the town coming to feast on his body. That's a whole different type of warfare. Because now you even thinking like after death, they still fucking with you. See, they got to back the fuck up off us, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? They got to back up off us. And it's super important for us as a culture, as a people, to start to understand this. Like, we can't forget about this shit, because first we need to figure out what happened. It's almost like a relationship, right? You want me to forgive you like we date you, and you want us to forgive you for hurting us, but you still ain't admitting to what the fuck you really did. First, we need to see the true animalistic nature of you, right? And we need to ask ourselves why. You know what I'm saying? See, that's why I always tell people when we start having these conversations and I talk history with people, I don't just if we deal with history in America, that's the finished result of thousands of, should I say the term? 'Cause I don't want to say thousands. Like we know that it was a time where they can't see them on the planet past a certain years. Like anything past, I believe what they say, like 4,000 years ago, there was no evidence of them, or 2,000 years ago, everything that predates to 20, 30,000 years ago, there's no evidence of any other races on the planet. So I think it's just this morning's conversation is a touchy topic, but the more that they do tell us, and not to get off top of the left finish, is the more we learn why they were so afraid. They weren't just cowards. Like they bear witness some of the most gruesome shit possible. And then we got to ask ourselves, if trauma is passed on genetically, they can prove it. They understand why such an animalistic behavior in the Black community. We were the delectable Negroes. We were the elegant, like they were even saying that we taste good and that it did things for you.
Find out, the harder it is to love this place that would do those things to so many people. And if you're feeling this way, which I often do, you can try loving what this country could become instead. Our history may be full of pain, but our future has limitless possibilities. So look to the future while simultaneously being suspicious of every lake you see. When you think of the term welfare queen, you might...
Damn. She said what? So it made me think. When we opened up for Glorilla, right? We was at that lake. And lakes are man-made. Just like if you go down Creedmoor Road in North Carolina and it takes you to Creedmoor, North Carolina, to Beaver Dam and Saddle Lake, I believe that's the name. Or that was the old name. I know they be changing it. But those are lakes. It was such a nice area. It started to make me wonder, like, what the fuck is under that water? It makes me suspicious of all lakes because all lakes are man-made. And when she said they were undercompensated, most of the time it happened to white people, like they'll get forced out, but they'll give them some money, maybe not with everything what they were, but they can survive. With us, we was ran out, killed, and just the land was taken. So we did, for the record, coming out of slavery, niggas did own land, property, shit. And we argue like, nigga, we sold it all. No, we didn't. We sold small tabs of what we had left. 2% out of the whole pie. The rest was taken forcefully. And I think they knew that if they didn't sell the land, looking at what they learned from their ancestors who survived, that they was going to take it and kill them anyway. So they settled for cheap prices. It's just like my family in Virginia, it made me realize why they got rid of that land. Because after knowing what has happened, they probably was like, you know, they didn't want nothing to do with it, because if they didn't sell it, look at all that land in Virginia Beach that's commercial property. All that land in Virginia Beach is owned by my mother's side of the family. It's Blackfoot Indian, which lets me know that I'm related to Monteoka, which is Pocahontas herself, on my mother's side. And then on my mother's father's side, they were 100% Ethiopians. That's where them high cheekbones I got come from. Just like Nipsey, Ethiopians who became Eritreans, the ones that left and split from Selassie and them. So it's deep. How y'all feeling this morning? Let me get back to the comment section. It says, what is it called again? Also called the city of Chokia. Yeah, let me see. It says, should have gave them even more reason to fight. In some sense, right. Just like how people don't understand how slaves were running businesses since the day they were born. Like, yeah, when the slaves became free, it was Black Revolution. It was revolution because they had they did all the work and all the labor. So one, they was able to work and look, the plantation owner lost a lot. Once, like, you know, they gave us the 40 acres and a mule at one time, but then they gave it right back like 8 years later. The next president told them the slaves, like, they, you know, you're not slaves, but the land goes back and da-da-da, and the 40 acres kind of got taken back. Do your history. And then we was able to bargain with them, and some of us probably negotiated. If you need me and my 7 kids to work this land because I'm the best person in this town, that then you know I am, because my family always been the best ones because it was passed down, then I'm gonna need 3 acres to myself off of your 6,000 acres. And this is what I'm willing to do. So we had power. So then we had all the skill sets. We made all the tools. We cut all the stuff. So we already knew how to do it. When we left out of slavery, the next 100 years was black power. That's why down south was blacks owned a lot. North blacks owned a lot. But between the late 1800s and 1940, mid 1800s, should I say, in between 1850 to 1950, we own so much. And just by time 1885 to 1930, 1950, 60, like, damn. The statue in Central Park, yeah, it's just crazy. It's crazy. But I ain't gonna hold y'all all morning. I'm gonna get up out of here, man. BH.